places in our military where we are trained to start and fuel insurgencies.
That's the same kind of they've been doing their whole career. Now they're doing it here inside the United States.
Anybody who says that this can't happen in a worse way, either they're ignorant or they're part of the problem.
Today, domestic terrorism is the greatest terrorist threat facing the United States.
The CIA has this tool where they measure levels of insurgency, and if you just apply the tool to the U.S., we are in an incipient insurgency.
Do you want your house back? Take it!
How did I end up on one side of that door? And my fellow veterans, how did they end up on the other side of that door?
That was part of the trailer from the new documentary titled Against All Enemies, which takes a look at why some military veterans are drawn to the growing, violent, far-right extremist movement in America, essentially becoming a threat to the democracy they once swore to uphold. Joining us now, the film's director and producer, Charlie Sadov, writer and executive producer, Sebastian Junger, and writer and producer, Ken Harbaugh. Thank you all for being here this morning. Ken, the footage of January 6th is interspliced throughout this documentary, powerfully so. Talk to us about this phenomenon. What has caused it?
So the reason so many veterans, and it's not most veterans, I think that has to be said, but it's too many. Of course. And they're drawn to these extremist groups like the Oath Keepers and Proud Boys, in large part out of a sense of loss and needing to replace that with a community and a mission, because when you take off the uniform, that need for mission and camaraderie doesn't go away. And these groups do a really good job at recreating that. And I think it's incumbent upon us to find other avenues for them to channel that desire to be part of something bigger than themselves. The problem is these groups channel that desire to undermining democracy.
So, Sebastian, what is the trend line here? Why do we think there's been such an increase, an uptick in this behavior?
Well, I think the Western society is going through a lot of changes right now, and for economic reasons, political reasons, and changes like that will bring out extremism. And it happens on the left, too. It's just not violent like it is on the far right. And we just had 20 years of war. When my father is a refugee from two wars. In 36, he fled Spain. The Spanish Civil War was promulgated by veterans from the Spanish War in Morocco. And they harnessed that damage to those soldiers. They harnessed it politically. Franco did it, and he took over.
So, Charlie, talk to us about the film itself. And what sort of people did you talk to? What sort of access did you have? Tell us a little more about the story you're trying to tell.
Sure. We wanted to get inside some of these groups. We didn't just want to show them firing their guns out in the woods, which is a lot of time what you see with the profiles of some of these groups. So we had access to the Oath Keepers, as you saw in the trailer. We had access to the Proud Boys, former leader of the New York chapter of the Proud Boys. We have footage of the Patriot Front and Three Percenters. We sort of in bed with all of them, and I took time to actually hear their stories and give them a chance to articulate their point of view. And they were happy to tell us about that because they think that what they're doing is the right thing. They think they're defending the Constitution of the United States. They think that they're patriots. And so they're not at all abashed about telling us what they think.
Sebastian, talk a little bit more about that sense of belonging that people who are serving in the military get from the military, and then perhaps after they leave are looking for somewhere else and maybe find that sense of family almost in these groups.
Yeah, I mean, and to be clear, the vast majority of veterans, I believe, miss that sense of belonging, sense of purpose that comes with the military, and then didn't go on to storm the nation's capital. So let's be clear about that. But the ones that made that choice, I think for whatever personal reasons, they had a desperate need to feel heroic, to feel needed, to feel like they had that sense of purpose again, and the sort of military trappings of far-right radicalized groups. They're, in some ways, they're sort of playing soldier back home in a way that I think feels heroic to them. And that is a deep human need. We're social primates. Humans evolved in groups of 30, 40, 50 people to survive in very harsh conditions. We're wired for that. Modern society doesn't require it, and there's a real loss there. When people have been exposed to it in the military and then come back to America, there's a real hole to fill. And for some of these people, who I think have other psych issues, in many cases, they fill that hole with insurrection.
And certainly this is an issue the Pentagon aware of in both current soldiers and veterans. A powerful documentary called Against All Enemies, playing in select theaters now and available for purchase on demand. Charlie Sadow, Sebastian Younger, Ken Harbaugh, thank you all for joining us this morning. Congrats on the film.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.